What if Earth's axis suddenly tilted to 45 degrees? Today, Earth is tilted by about 23.4 degrees. That tilt is responsible for the seasons we experience. Now imagine that the planet suddenly shifts to almost twice that angle. The first thing that would change is the way sunlight reaches Earth. The sun would shine much more directly on some regions during their summer, while other regions would receive dramatically less sunlight during winter. The familiar pattern of seasons would disappear. Summers could become much more extreme, winters could become far colder and longer, and the effects wouldn't stay at the poles. Regions much farther north and south would experience extreme seasonal changes. But the most important question is what would happen to Earth's climate system as a whole. When the northern hemisphere points strongly toward the sun, summer would become dramatically different. The sun could climb much higher in the sky across regions that currently experience milder summers. More solar energy would reach the surface, temperatures would rise, evaporation would increase, and many ecosystems would face intense heat and water stress. But it wouldn't simply mean that the entire northern hemisphere becomes a giant desert. More evaporation also means more atmospheric moisture. Some regions could experience powerful rainfall and storms. Others could become much drier. The key difference would be seasonality. The contrast between summer and winter would become far stronger than today. Some places could experience enormous environmental changes within just a few months. Then the planet would move around the sun. The same hemisphere that experienced extreme summer would eventually face an equally dramatic winter. The sun would remain much lower in the sky. Some regions would receive very little sunlight for long periods. Temperatures could plunge. Snow and ice would survive much longer. Lakes and rivers in colder regions could freeze more extensively. Plants would face extremely short growing seasons. Animals would have to survive much larger seasonal changes. And in the far north and south, long periods of darkness could become much more extreme than they are today. Earth would essentially become a planet of climatic extremes. The oceans would be one of the most important parts of this new climate. Oceans store enormous amounts of heat, and they move that heat around the planet. A 45-degree tilt would dramatically change where sunlight enters the ocean and when different regions warm and cool. Ocean temperatures would become more seasonal. Currents could shift as atmospheric circulation changes. Sea ice would expand dramatically in some seasons and retreat in others. This would affect marine ecosystems from microscopic plankton to giant ocean animals. Coastal regions would also experience new patterns of storms, rainfall, and evaporation. The ocean would become part of a completely different climate machine. Life on Earth has evolved around the current seasonal cycle. A sudden 45-degree tilt would challenge that balance. Plants would have to cope with stronger heat during some seasons and much harsher cold during others. Many species would migrate toward regions with more suitable conditions. Some ecosystems could expand. Others could disappear from certain areas. Agriculture would face one of its biggest challenges. Farmers depend on predictable temperatures, rainfall, and growing seasons. With extreme seasonal changes, some crops could become difficult to grow. Humans could adapt by changing where and when we grow food. But ecosystems cannot always adapt quickly enough. The planet wouldn't become lifeless. Instead, life would be forced into a massive redistribution. Human civilization would face an enormous challenge. Our cities, farms, roads, and energy systems were designed around today's climate. A much stronger seasonal cycle would force societies to adapt. Some regions could become difficult to farm during extreme summers. Others could become extremely cold during winter. Energy demand would fluctuate dramatically. Cities would need more cooling during extreme summers and more heating during severe winters. Food production could shift toward regions with more stable conditions. Entire agricultural zones could move. Countries would have to adapt infrastructure, water management, and food systems. Humanity would probably survive. But the world map of agriculture, population, and economic power could look very different. What if all the glaciers? So would a 45-degree Earth become uninhabitable? Not necessarily. Earth would still have an atmosphere, oceans, gravity, and sunlight. Life would continue, but the planet would be dramatically different. Summers and winters would become much more extreme. Climate zones would shift. Ocean circulation and atmospheric patterns would change. Ecosystems would migrate. Agriculture would have to adapt. And some regions that are comfortable today could become extremely difficult to live in. The most fascinating part is that Earth's tilt doesn't just control the seasons, it helps shape the entire climate system. Change that angle dramatically and you change the rhythm of the planet itself. Earth wouldn't die. It would become a completely different world.